The night of the discovery. The storm arrived without warning. Heavy clouds swallowed the moon above the ancient stone towers of Arlingham Palace, and rain began to fall in long silver sheets across the royal grounds. Security lights reflected off the wet marble pathways, turning the courtyard into a mirror of shadows and gold. Inside the East Wing corridor, Royal Guard Commander Daniel Mercer walked alone. He had walked these halls for 17 years. He knew every camera angle, every security blind spot, every echo of footsteps against the stone. Tonight something felt wrong. Not dangerous, not yet, but wrong in a way he couldn't ignore. Daniel adjusted the collar of his uniform jacket and slowed near the restricted archives corridor. Only top-level staff and senior royals had access to this section. And yet, the security door was slightly open. Not forced, not damaged, just open. Daniel's training took over instantly. He didn't rush. He didn't panic. He simply moved forward, silent as breath. Inside, the archive lights were on. A faint rustling sound came from the document storage room. Daniel stepped inside. "Hello," he said calmly. The sound stopped. For a moment, there was only the hum of the climate-controlled archive vault. Then, a shadow moved behind the file shelving. Daniel's hand hovered near his radio. "Security check," he said. "Identify yourself." A man stepped out slowly. Elegant suit, perfect posture, calm expression. Adrian Hale, the son of the Queen Consort from her first marriage. Daniel blinked once. Not because he was surprised to see Adrian in the palace, but because Adrian was not authorized to be here. "Mr. Hale," Daniel said evenly, "the archives are restricted after 8 p.m. Adrian smiled politely. "I was given clearance." "By whom?" "Administrative office." Daniel nodded slowly. But something didn't sit right. Adrian was holding a slim black folder. Daniel noticed the gold security seal sticker, broken. That seal was only used for lineage documentation, the kind of files that were never supposed to leave the vault. Warning a guard's instinct. Daniel had served 3 generations of the royal family. He wasn't political. He wasn't emotional. But he understood one thing deeply. Some information didn't just belong to people. It belonged to history. And history, if twisted, could destroy futures. "May I log that file for you, sir?" Daniel asked calmly. Adrian hesitated. Just for a second. Then smiled again. "No need. I'll return it personally." Daniel nodded. But his instinct screamed. Cloud with rain, the first doubt. Later that night, Daniel reviewed archive access logs. Adrian Hale had not been granted clearance. Not today. Not yesterday. Not ever. Daniel leaned back in his chair. His chest tightened. This wasn't a simple mistake. Someone had bypassed security. Or someone inside had allowed it. And that meant risk. Not scandal risk. Not embarrassment risk. National stability risk. Open file folder, the secret review. Daniel didn't act immediately. He watched. Over the next 6 days he noticed patterns. Adrian visiting administrative offices late at night. Private meetings with unknown consultants. Encrypted calls outside CCTV range. Then Daniel made the decision that would change everything. He requested routine archive maintenance access. And when he entered the lineage vault, one file was missing. Crown why it mattered. The file wasn't about money, or property, or political decisions. It was about succession confirmation history. Historical verification documents proving legal continuity of royal lineage decades earlier. Documents already verified and sealed long ago. But if taken out of context, if presented selectively, if twisted by media or conspiracy groups, it could create public doubt. And doubt was powerful. Milky Way, the personal cost. That night, Daniel sat in his small apartment overlooking the river. His phone buzzed. Caller, Lily Mercer. His daughter. Age 16. Bright. Kind. Dreaming of becoming a doctor. "Hey Dad," she said. "You sound tired." "I'm okay," he said softly. "You always say that when you're not." Daniel smiled sadly. "I just had a long shift." They talked about school. Her exams. Her friends. Normal life. The kind of life Daniel protected, quietly, every single day. When the call ended, Daniel stared at the palace skyline. If he ignored this, nothing might happen. Or everything might. If he acted, he could lose. His career. His reputation. His pension. His freedom. But if he did nothing, future generations could carry a shadow that didn't belong to them.
The information within this binder is highly classified.
Daniel stood,
As you review it,
walked to
please
his
maintain
desk,
the utmost
opened a
discretion.
notebook, and wrote one sentence. Duty is not about comfort. It is about consequence. Then he began documenting everything. Access logs, camera times, visitor patterns, archive anomalies. He wasn't stealing secrets. He was protecting truth. Crescent Moon, the turning point. On the 7th night, Daniel saw Adrian leaving the palace with a secure courier case. That was enough. Daniel requested emergency internal review authority. Denied. He escalated. Denied again. That told him something terrifying. Someone powerful wanted this ignored. Light bulbed the plan. Daniel knew he needed someone outside internal influence. Someone who cared about stability more than politics. Someone who protected family first. He knew exactly who. Sunrise the next morning. The princess was scheduled to visit a children's rehabilitation center. Private visit. Low media presence. Minimal disruption. Daniel stood across the street, heart steady. Not scared. Not angry. Just determined. Because sometimes, history changes not because of kings, but because one person refuses to look away. The secret meeting. The morning air felt unusually still. Commander Daniel Mercer stood across the street from the Rosebridge Children's Rehabilitation Center, watching the quiet arrival lane where royal vehicles would soon stop. He checked his watch. 9:42 a.m. 4 minutes early. He always preferred early. It gave him time to think. Time to prepare. Time to remind himself why he was here. Not for recognition. Not for promotion. Not even for forgiveness.
Something's not right here.
He was here because sometimes protecting the future meant stepping into uncertainty alone. Automobile, the arrival. At exactly 9:46 a.m., 3 black security vehicles turned onto the hospital drive. Smooth. Controlled. Precise. Daniel exhaled slowly. The middle vehicle stopped near the side entrance. The door opened, and Princess Eleanor stepped out. She wore a soft gray coat and carried herself with the calm confidence of someone who had learned to live under constant observation without letting it change who she was. She smiled at hospital staff waiting near the door. Warm. Genuine. Human. Daniel hesitated. Just for half a second. Then he stepped forward. Stop sign, the interception. Security reacted instantly. 2 officers moved between Daniel and the princess. Hands near communication devices. Eyes scanning. Sir, stop there. Daniel raised both hands slowly. My name is Commander Daniel Mercer. Royal Guard. I need to speak with Her Royal Highness regarding a security matter concerning the Crown's future stability. The officers exchanged looks. Princess Eleanor paused near the entrance. She studied Daniel's face carefully. Then spoke calmly. I remember him. He was assigned during the Northern State visit 2 years ago. The officers didn't move immediately, but they stepped aside enough to allow conversation. Ulki, the first words. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. Ma'am, I would not approach you like this unless it was urgent. Princess Eleanor's expression shifted slightly. Not fear. Not shock. Recognition of seriousness. What kind of urgent? Daniel removed a sealed document envelope from inside his coat. Unauthorized archive access. Lineage confirmation records. Potential external release risk. Her eyes hardened instantly. Inside, she said quietly. Hospital, the private room. The hospital provided a small consultation room. Plain white walls. Small conference table. 2 chairs. 1 security officer at the door. Princess Eleanor sat. Daniel placed the envelope in front of her. She opened it slowly. Page by page she read. Daniel watched silently. He could see the moment she understood the scale. Her shoulders stiffened. Her breathing slowed. Not panic. Control. Warning, the realization. These are sealed continuity records, she said quietly. Yes, ma'am. They cannot legally be disclosed. Yes, ma'am. And if someone releases partial or manipulated versions? Daniel nodded. It could create public uncertainty about historical succession legitimacy. Silence filled the room. Then she asked the most important question. How many people know? Only me. And now you. Broken heart, the hard truth. She closed the folder. Who took them? Daniel answered carefully. Evidence suggests Adrian Hale. She closed her eyes briefly. Not denial. Not disbelief. Just processing. He would never want to harm the institution, she said quietly. I believe that, Daniel said. But I believe someone may be influencing him. Cloud with rain, the human moment. For a moment she looked less like royalty. More like a mother. More like a wife. More like someone carrying a weight no one else could see. My children deserve stability, she said quietly. Yes, ma'am. My husband deserves truth. Yes, ma'am. And you risked everything bringing this to me. Daniel didn't answer. He didn't need to. Telephone receiver the call. She picked up her secure phone. Spoke briefly. Clear. Direct. Come. When she hung up, she looked at Daniel. He returns tonight. Daniel nodded. Midnight briefing. Palace West Wing. You will attend. Yes, ma'am. High voltage the warning. Then her voice lowered. Commander. Adrian knows something is missing. Daniel felt the shift instantly. Security? Unclear. But he has external advisors. Media contacts. Private legal consultants. Daniel understood. The clock was moving faster now. Glowing star the offer. Then something unexpected happened. She leaned forward slightly. You are not alone in this. Daniel blinked. I serve the crown, ma'am. And the crown protects those who protect it, she said quietly. Crescent moon the waiting hours. Daniel spent the rest of the day preparing. Cross-checking records. Duplicating documentation. Securing backup evidence and legal escrow. Not paranoia. Preparation. If truth needed to survive, it needed protection. Castle the midnight return. At 11:58 p.m., Daniel stood inside the West Wing briefing chamber. 2 senior legal advisors. 1 national security liaison. Princess Eleanor. Then the door opened. The heir stepped in. Tired from travel. But focused. He sat. Looked at Daniel. Commander Mercer, he said calmly. My wife says you've uncovered something important. Daniel placed the master file on the table. And began. Glowing star the moment of truth. For 2 hours, Daniel explained everything. Evidence only. No speculation. No accusations beyond proof. When he finished, the room was silent. Then the heir spoke quietly. If this becomes public without context, it damages trust. Yes, sir. And trust is harder to rebuild than reputation. Yes, sir. Lightbulb the strategy. The decision was made. Not to hide. Not to suppress. But to prepare transparent historical clarification, if needed, before misinformation could spread. Truth first. Always. Sunrise the resolution of part 2. As Daniel left the palace near 3 a.m., he knew something had changed. Not just politically, but morally. Because leadership wasn't about control. It was about responsibility. And sometimes, the strongest defense was honesty. The hidden influence network. The palace never truly slept. Even at 3:17 a.m., quiet movement echoed through service corridors, security rooms glowed with screens, and somewhere deep inside the historic structure, decisions were being made that would shape years, sometimes decades, into the future. Commander Daniel Mercer walked through the underground security wing, his footsteps steady, controlled, but heavy with the weight of what he now knew. Part 2 had changed everything. The heir knew. The princess knew. Legal and national security teams were now quietly involved. But knowledge alone didn't solve the problem. Because the biggest question still remained. Why would Adrian Hale risk everything? Crescent Moon the uncomfortable possibility. Daniel sat across from Intelligence Liaison Director Amelia Hart, a woman known for one thing above all else. She trusted facts, not assumptions. She slid a tablet across the table. We started reviewing Adrian Hale's recent financial and communication patterns, she said calmly. Daniel studied the screen. Consulting payments. Private research firms. Political think tanks. Media strategy consultants. None illegal. But all connected. Not directly. Indirectly. Like threads in a web that had been carefully woven to avoid detection. Warning the real risk. Here's the concern, Amelia said. She tapped a graph. These organizations specialize in narrative shaping. Daniel frowned slightly. Public opinion management? Yes. Legal. Technically ethical.
The projections
but powerful.
Look solid.
But
She
what
leaned
about market
forward.
volatility?
If historical
models account
documents
for
are
that.
released
I hope you're
selectively,
right.
even if authentic, they can be framed to create confusion. Daniel understood instantly. Not lies, but selective truth. And selective truth was often more dangerous. Bar chart the pattern. Over the next 48 hours, Daniel worked with internal investigators. They discovered Adrian had been meeting with historical reinterpretation consultants. Media analysts specializing in institution transparency campaigns. Private investors funding royal modernization movements. None illegal. All public. But together, they formed something larger. A movement built around one idea. questioning long-standing institutional narratives. Broken heart, the human side. Late one evening, Daniel sat alone in the palace garden courtyard. His phone buzzed. Lily again. Dad, you forgot to call me today. His heart dropped. I'm sorry, sweetheart. You always say work is important. But, are you okay? He looked up at the palace windows glowing in the night. I'm trying to make sure things stay safe for people. You always do that. Her voice softened. I'm proud of you. Daniel swallowed hard. Because sometimes, the smallest voices reminded you why the biggest fights mattered. Brain the breakthrough. 2 days later, Amelia called Daniel urgently. We found something. A private strategy memo from one of the consulting firms. It never mentioned Adrian directly, but it outlined a campaign concept. Encourage public re-examination of historical succession documentation to promote institutional modernization through transparency pressure. Daniel leaned back slowly. This wasn't blackmail. This wasn't revenge. This was influence strategy. Public pressure. Narrative change. Power, through doubt. Crown the royal response. That night, the princess, the heir, legal advisors, and national security representatives met again. The conclusion was unanimous. This wasn't criminal conspiracy. This was strategic influence. And the best defense was controlled transparency. Not forced. Not reactive. Prepared. Glowing star, the hard choice. The heir spoke quietly. If people ask questions, we answer honestly. No anger. No blame. Just calm leadership. The princess added. But we protect context. History is not headlines. It's complexity. Daniel watched them both and realized something powerful. Strength wasn't about control. It was about confidence and truth. High voltage, the confrontation decision. They would not accuse Adrian publicly. Instead, they would meet him privately. Give him the chance to step away from external influence networks.
What's the source? The European
Protect him.
grid?
Yes.
Protect
Deploy
the
firewalls
institution.
immediately.
Protect public trust. Cloud with rain, the private meeting. 3 days later, Adrian Hale sat across from the heir and the princess in a private study. Daniel stood near the door. Silent. Observing. The heir spoke calmly. We know you've been working with external narrative consultants. Adrian didn't deny it. I believe institutions must evolve. The princess answered gently. Evolution requires responsibility, not pressure through public uncertainty. Adrian looked conflicted. Not malicious. Not power-hungry. Just convinced he was helping. Light bulb, the turning moment. The heir spoke quietly. Change built on doubt weakens trust. Change built on truth strengthens it. Adrian stared at the table for a long time, then finally said, I never meant to create instability. And Daniel believed him. Sunrise, the resolution of part 3. Adrian agreed to step away from external consultants. The documentation would be secured. Historical context reports would be quietly prepared, not released, unless ever needed. Crisis avoided. Not through force. Not through secrecy. Through conversation. Through leadership. Through responsibility. Glowing star, Daniel's quiet reward. No medals. No headlines. Just a quiet handshake from the heir. And one sentence. You did your duty, not just to us but to truth. That was enough. More than enough. The public turning point. The world never knew how close uncertainty had come. But inside the palace, everyone felt it. Like thunder that had rolled across the horizon without ever breaking into a storm. Commander Daniel Mercer stood at the palace balcony doors just after sunrise, watching London wake up beneath pale winter light. Traffic slowly filled the streets. News vans moved through the city. Life went on, unaware of how fragile public confidence could sometimes be. Behind him, inside the strategy chamber, history was being written in quiet voices. Globe showing Europe-Africa the global press climate. Director Amelia Hart projected media trend analytics onto the screen. Global conversation around institutional transparency is rising, she explained. Not directed at us specifically, yet. But the environment is primed. The heir nodded slowly. Meaning if anything ambiguous surfaces, it spreads fast. Yes, Amelia said. And once narratives form, they are difficult to reverse. Princess Eleanor added quietly. Then we don't wait for narratives. Everyone in the room understood what she meant. Not damage control. Leadership. Light bulb, the strategic decision. The final plan wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. It was calm. Measured. Transparent, without feeding speculation. The Royal Communications Office would release an upcoming historical documentary partnership announcement. Not defensive. Not reactive. Educational. Contextual. History told fully, not selectively. Newspaper the announcement. 2 weeks later, the palace released a simple statement. The Royal Historical Archive Initiative will partner with leading historians to digitally preserve and contextualize historical continuity records for future generations of scholars. No defensive language. No reference to rumors. Just confidence. And the global reaction? Curiosity. Respect. Stability. Glowing star. Why it worked? Because transparency done voluntarily looks like strength. Transparency forced looks like weakness. The heir understood that deeply. And Daniel realized something profound. Truth didn't always need to be shouted. Sometimes it just needed to be quietly ready. Broken heart. Adrian's personal crossroads. Meanwhile, Adrian Hale made his own quiet decisions. He stepped away from consulting groups. Ended several contracts. Not because he was forced. Because he finally understood something the princess had said. Change that protects people lasts longer than change that pressures them. Adrian wasn't a villain. He was someone who believed he was helping. Until he saw the bigger picture.
Oh, look at
Cloud
the
with
castle.
rain.
It's
Daniel's
beautiful.
private doubt.
The castle's history
One
spans
evening,
over 5
Daniel
centuries.
sat in his
Fascinating
apartment
indeed.
kitchen staring at nothing. The crisis had passed. But inside he still felt unsettled. Because he had crossed lines. Even if for the right reasons. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Commander Mercer? Yes. This is the Office of National Security Review. We'd like to meet with you. His stomach tightened. Not fear. Just reality catching up. Balance scale. The accountability moment. The review meeting was formal. Professional. Direct. They reviewed his actions step by step. Unauthorized documentation handling. Protocol deviation. Chain of command bypass. Then they asked the most important question. Why did you do it? Daniel answered honestly. Because waiting would have increased risk. Silence filled the room. Then one reviewer nodded slowly. Duty sometimes requires judgment. You will receive a formal protocol reprimand. Daniel nodded. He expected worse. Glowing star. The quiet recognition. 3 days later, Daniel was reassigned. Not demoted. Not punished. Moved to Royal Historical Security Oversight, a new unit protecting archive integrity. No public recognition. But internally, everyone understood. Crown the palace conversation. Weeks later, Daniel was invited to a small private reception. The heir approached him quietly. You reminded us that systems are only as strong as the people willing to protect them. Princess Eleanor added. And that courage is usually very quiet. Daniel didn't know what to say. So he simply said, Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Sunrise. The public turning point. 6 months later, the Royal Archive documentary aired globally. Historians. Experts. Context. Clarity. No controversy. No scandal. Just history, complete and honest. And public trust grew stronger. Not weaker. Glowing star. The lesson of part 4. Daniel realized something most people never learn. Leadership isn't about avoiding storms. It's about making sure the foundations are strong enough that storms don't matter. Crescent moon. The personal peace. That night, Daniel called Lily. I'm visiting this weekend, he said. Promise? She asked. Promise. And for the first time in months, he slept without replaying decisions in his head. The legacy protected. The rain returned exactly 1 year later. Not a storm. Just a steady, peaceful rain that painted the palace gardens silver and green under the morning sky. Commander Daniel Mercer stood beneath the stone archway overlooking the Royal Memorial Garden, watching raindrops ripple across the reflecting pool. 1 year. 12 months since the night everything nearly changed. 12 months since one quiet decision protected something larger than reputation. Protected trust. Protected stability. Protected legacy. The new normal. Life inside the palace had moved forward. The Royal Historical Security Unit, Daniel's unit, had grown into one of the most
How's the
respected
studying
silent
going?
departments
It's getting
inside
there.
royal
Just a lot to
operations.
cover.
They
You've
didn't
got
chase
this.
threats. They prevented misunderstandings. They ensured history stayed complete, contextual, and protected from selective misuse. No headlines. No awards. But enormous importance. And Daniel preferred it that way. Glowing star. The global impact. The Royal Historical Archive Initiative had expanded internationally. Universities collaborated. Historians contributed independent verification. Transparency had become strength, not vulnerability. Public confidence remained stable, even during global uncertainty. Because people trusted institutions that trusted truth. Broken Heart, Adrian's new path. Adrian Hale had quietly stepped into a different role. He began working with historical education foundations, helping modernize how history was taught, responsibly, completely, ethically. He and the heir spoke occasionally now. Not as rivals. Not even as political figures. As two people who both wanted the same thing. Stability for future generations. Cloud with Rain, Daniel's personal reward. But Daniel's greatest reward didn't happen inside the palace. It happened on a Saturday afternoon in Brighton. At a small cafe near the sea. Lily sat across from him, books spread across the table. Medical entrance exam results next week, she said nervously. You'll do amazing, Daniel said. You always say that. Because I always mean it. She studied him for a moment. You look lighter. Daniel thought about that. Maybe he was. Because sometimes the heaviest burden wasn't responsibility. It was doubt. And he no longer doubted he had done the right thing. Balance scale, the final reflection. Later that evening, Daniel walked along the Brighton shoreline alone. Wind off the water. Salt air. Waves rolling endlessly. He thought about everything he almost lost. Career stability. Reputation security. Personal comfort. But he also thought about everything that remained strong because someone acted early. Because someone chose duty over ease. Crown, the final invitation. 2 weeks later, Daniel received a simple envelope. Royal seal. Inside. Commander Mercer. Your continued service is requested at the Royal Future Leadership Symposium, internal advisory role. With gratitude. Not a promotion. Not a title. Something better. Trust. Glowing star, the last palace meeting. During the symposium reception, the heir approached Daniel one last time. History will never record your role in detail, he said quietly. Daniel nodded. That's all right, sir. But the future will exist partly because of it. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. Not pride. Purpose. Light bulb, the final lesson. Before leaving, Princess Eleanor said something Daniel would carry forever. Most people think legacy is built by famous moments. She paused. But legacy is really built by quiet decisions no one sees. Sunrise, the true ending. Months later. The Royal Archive Initiative opened its public research digital access wing. Students. Researchers. Historians. All studying history in full context, not fragments. And across the world, trust remained steady. Not because nothing had ever gone wrong, but because when challenges came, truth was ready. Water waved, the final scene. On another rainy morning, Daniel stood once more at the palace garden pool. Different year. Same rain. But different man. His phone buzzed. Message from Lily. Dad, I got in. Medical school. Daniel closed his eyes. Exhaled. Smiled. And typed back. I'm proud of you. Always. Glowing star, final message of the story. History is not protected by power alone. It is protected by integrity, courage, responsibility, and people willing to stand quietly when it matters most. Because sometimes, the greatest heroes are never known. But the world is better because they existed. White medium star, the end.